The bright lights of the ceremonial hall glinted off the polished floor as 5 humans in crisp blue uniforms stood at attention. Above them, the curved ceiling displayed a swirling map of the Galactic Council's territory. Tens of thousands of stars spanning 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way. The humans looked small beneath it, as they were meant to. General Frank Monroe watched from the shadows, his weathered face betraying no emotion. This ceremony marked humanity's first real integration into the Council's military structure, barely 3 years after Earth had been discovered by alien scouts. The speed of this invitation was unprecedented, but then again, the Council was desperate. The Arbiters welcomed their first human members, announced High Commander Zorv, his insect-like mandibles clicking between words. The translator embedded in Monroe's ear barely kept up with the aliens' complex speech patterns. These 5 warriors have been selected for their exceptional service records and unique tactical thinking. Monroe suppressed a bitter smile. Unique, tactical thinking. That was one way to describe it. The 5 stood perfectly still as Zorv placed ceremonial silver pins on their collars. Each pin showed the symbol of the Arbiters, a hand holding scales against a starfield. The Arbiters were the Council's elite force, deployed only for the most challenging conflicts across Council space. They were peacekeepers, mediators, and when necessary, warriors without equal. Major Alan Blackwood was first in line, his face expressionless as Zorv pinned the symbol to his collar. Alan had fought in the Resource Wars 15 years ago. His official record noted exemplary leadership and tactical innovation. It did not mention the mining colony on Ceres, where he had ordered his men to use outlawed oxygen depletion bombs to flush out enemy forces hiding among civilians. 400 people had suffocated slowly. The military tribunal had been closed door. The records were sealed. Captain Samantha Wells stood second, her blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She nodded respectfully as she received her pin. During the African campaign of the Resource Wars, she had commanded a special operations unit responsible for information extraction. Her methods had been so extreme that 3 separate human rights organizations had called for her arrest. Instead, she had been quietly reassigned. "We are honored," Samantha said to Zorv, her voice steady and pleasant. Lieutenant Gregory Patel was next, dark-skinned and slim with alert eyes that missed nothing. His specialization had been biological warfare during the Mars uprising. He had developed compounds that targeted specific genetic markers. The Council would never know that he had personally tested these compounds on prisoners, watching through observation glass as they died in agony. Specialist Nicole Harris accepted her pin with a shy smile that made her look younger than her 34 years. The explosive expert had revolutionized urban combat with her precision demolition techniques. The files didn't use the term human wave detector, her practice of forcing captured enemies to walk through suspected minefields first. Sergeant Chew, John Martinez, completed the lineup. His infiltration skills were legendary, but few knew about his habit of wearing necklaces made from enemy dog tags. Or worse. Monroe shifted his weight from one foot to the other. These 5 were the best Earth had to offer, if best meant most effective regardless of methods. When the Council had requested candidates for their elite force, Earth's leaders had seen an opportunity. These 5 were problems, too valuable to imprison for their war crimes, too dangerous to reintegrate into civilian life, and too notorious to continue serving publicly in Earth forces. "You will now take the oath of the Arbiters," Zorv continued. "For 5,000 cycles, these words have bound our finest warriors to the defense of civilization." As the humans repeated the ancient alien words, Admiral Diane Russell joined Monroe in the shadows. "Think they suspect anything?" she whispered. Monroe shook his head slightly. "They barely understand humans at all. They see our wars as primitive, conflicts over resources, not the complex mess they really were. To them, these 5 are distinguished veterans. And when they discover the truth?" Russell's eyes tracked Samantha Wells, who was now shaking hands with a 4-armed alien ambassador. "By then they'll be too valuable to lose," Monroe said. "The Council has grown soft over millennia of relative peace. They follow rules of engagement that assume their enemies will do the same. They've forgotten how to fight dirty. Russell frowned. I don't like using them as a Trojan horse. Would you prefer they rot in secret prisons on Earth? This way they serve humanity's interests. The Council needs what they know, even if they don't realize it yet. The ceremony concluded with a series of speeches about honor and duty. The 5 humans listened attentively, their faces showing appropriate pride and humility. They played their parts perfectly. Later that evening, Monroe met them in a secure briefing room aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel. The 5 new arbiters sat around a plain table, their ceremonial uniforms exchanged for simple black fatigues. Congratulations, Monroe said without warmth. You're now members of the most elite fighting force in the galaxy. And our real mission? Alan asked directly. Monroe activated a privacy field that hummed softly around them. Official mission: serve the Council faithfully as arbiters. Real mission: learn everything you can about Council military capabilities, tactics, and weaknesses. Nicole Harris leaned forward. They're our allies now. Why do we need to spy on them? Because alliances change, Monroe replied. Humanity needs insurance. We're the newcomers in a very old club, and our history with each other suggests we should always have a backup plan. What about our records? Gregory Patel asked quietly. We've all been through multiple security screenings. Monroe allowed himself a small smile. Your records are clean as fresh snow. Earth Alliance intelligence made sure of that. They'll find out eventually, John Martinez said, spinning a stylus between his fingers with practiced ease. Someone always talks. By then, you'll have proven your worth, Monroe answered. The Council faces threats they don't understand. Their enemies don't play by gentlemanly rules of war. You 5 know how to fight and win when rules don't apply. Samantha Wells had been silent until now. They think we're heroes, she said, her voice tinged with something that might have been regret. Monroe met her eyes. You're whatever humanity needs you to be. Today that's arbiters. Tomorrow? We'll see. The 5 exchanged glances. They had all expected prison sentences or quiet executions after the resource wars ended. Instead, they had been kept in a strange limbo, too useful to discard, too dangerous to free. Now they were being given new identities as honored warriors. One last thing, Monroe added as he prepared to leave. Your neural implants have been upgraded with Council translation software, but they also contain emergency protocols only accessible by Earth Command. If necessary, we can activate them remotely. To give us new orders? Alan asked. Monroe's expression hardened. To ensure you can't share certain information if captured. Consider it a failsafe. After Monroe left, the 5 sat in silence for a long moment. Well, John finally said with a grim smile, looks like our punishment is to save the galaxy. Outside, the viewport, the massive Council station rotated slowly against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere out there danger was brewing that would test both the Council's ideals and humanity's ruthless pragmatism. And these 5, murderers, torturers, and war criminals by their own world standards, would stand at the crossroads when it came. 3 years passed since the humans joined the Arbiters. Captain Samantha Wells crouched behind a shattered wall on the mining planet Kepler 9. Blue dust clung to her combat armor as explosions shook the ground. Beside her, 2 alien Arbiters, Brekthar, a massive reptilian with armored skin, and Neva, a slender being who moved like flowing water, checked their weapons. 20 hostiles in the command center, Neva reported, her multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. They have anti-personnel cannons covering all approaches. Brekthar growled, the sound rumbling through his massive chest. The Council's rules of engagement require us to offer surrender terms again. Samantha suppressed a sigh. This was the 3rd terrorist cell they had tracked down this month. The group called themselves the Pure Void and believed all mining operations offended the natural state of space. They had already destroyed 2 orbital platforms, killing hundreds of workers. We've offered terms twice, she said. They responded with plasma fire. Protocol is protocol, Brekthar insisted. Samantha looked at the alien she had fought alongside for 3 years. He was brave, skilled, and utterly bound by rules that made no sense in this situation. The Council's warfare doctrine had been developed over thousands of years of largely ceremonial conflicts and political disputes. It wasn't designed for fanatics with nothing to lose. "Fine," she said. "One more attempt. But when they refuse, we need a new approach." Brekthar used the communication system to broadcast another surrender request. The response was immediate, a barrage of weapons fire that forced them deeper into cover. "Satisfied?" Samantha asked. Neva's fingers twitched nervously on her rifle. "The captain of our support vessel reports they cannot provide orbital assistance. The terrorists have placed civilian hostages on the roof." Samantha nodded. She had expected this. "I need 20 minutes. Keep their attention focused here." Brekthar's yellow eyes narrowed. "What are you planning?" "Something not in the Arbiter handbook," she replied, already checking her equipment. "Just trust me." Before either alien could object, Samantha slipped away through a fissure in the rocky ground. The mines of Kepler-9 created a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the surface. During the mission briefing, she had studied the old mining charts while her colleagues focused on assault tactics. The darkness of the tunnel reminded her of operations during the resource wars. Her team had once infiltrated an enemy base through sewage tunnels emerging behind their lines to eliminate their command structure. The mission had been classified as a success. The methods, involving captured enemy soldiers used as unwitting suicide bombers, had been classified as war crimes. Samantha pushed the memory away and focused on counting junctions as she moved through the darkness. When she reached the 5th intersection, she placed a small device on the tunnel ceiling. It hummed softly as it began to drill upward. 17 minutes later, Samantha emerged into a storage room directly beneath the terrorist command center. She could hear voices above, angry shouts as they coordinated fire against her comrades. She removed 3 small spheres from her pack and placed them strategically around the room. These weren't standard Arbiter equipment. They were Earth technology provided secretly by General Monroe before this deployment. The spheres contained a neurotoxin that would paralyze instantly and kill within minutes. The Council had banned such weapons centuries ago, considering them inhumane. But Samantha hadn't survived the resource wars by being humane. She activated the spheres and retreated to the tunnel entrance, sealing her helmet. 3 minutes later, the voices above went silent. She waited 2 more minutes before cutting through the floor with her plasma cutter. The command center was filled with bodies. Some had collapsed at their stations. Others had fallen while trying to reach the door. Their faces were frozen in expressions of shock and fear. Samantha stepped over them and quickly accessed their main computer. She downloaded their communications, records, membership lists, and base locations. Then she placed small explosive charges at key structural points in the room. Finally, she released the hostages from a side room where they had been held. "Follow the tunnel," she instructed them. "My colleagues will meet you at the other end." When Samantha rejoined Brekthar and Neva 20 minutes after she had left, the command center behind them erupted in a controlled explosion that collapsed in on itself. "What happened?" Brekthar demanded. "Their reactor was unstable," Samantha said smoothly. "I managed to free the hostages before it went critical." Neva's eyes studied her with unsettling intensity. "And the terrorists?" "Didn't make it," Samantha replied. She handed over a data crystal. "But I retrieved their network information. We can take down their entire organization now." Later, aboard their ship, Brekthar approached Samantha in the quiet of the cargo bay. "I reviewed the structural damage to the command center," he said without preamble. "It was not consistent with a reactor failure." Samantha continued cleaning her armor. "Sometimes witness reports are confused in combat situations." "There were no blast marks consistent with weapon fire," he continued. "No signs of struggle. Yet 20 trained fighters died simultaneously." She finally looked up at him. "The mission was successful. The hostages were saved. We have intelligence to prevent future attacks. The Council will be pleased." "The Council expects arbiters to follow certain principles," Brekthar said. Our methods matter as much as our results. Samantha set down her cleaning cloth. Where I come from, results are what keep people alive. Methods are luxury for those who've never faced extinction. The alien was silent for a long moment. You've never spoken of your service before joining the Arbiters. No, I haven't, she agreed, and the Council never asked for details. Brekthar shifted his massive form. Perhaps they should have. After he left, Samantha contacted Earth through a secure channel. General Monroe's hologram appeared before her, his expression grim as always. Another successful mission, she reported. But my methods are raising questions. Monroe nodded. It was inevitable. The Council's military database has begun requesting detailed records of human conflicts, specifically the resource wars. Will the records hold up to scrutiny? She asked. For now, Monroe said. But Security Officer Kevin Frost was questioned today after inconsistencies emerged in his background check. It's only a matter of time before they discover more. Samantha felt a chill. What do you want us to do? Continue the mission, Monroe instructed. The Council faces greater threats than they realize. They need your skills, whether they approve of how you acquired them or not. After the communication ended, Samantha sat alone in her quarters. On her personal tablet, she accessed an encrypted file, a news report from 15 years ago showing the aftermath of an operation she had led. Bodies laid in streets, buildings burned. At the time, she had believed the sacrifice necessary to secure victory. Now she wasn't sure what victory meant anymore. On the bridge, Brekthar accessed restricted Council archives. He entered a special query code that bypassed normal security protocols, a privilege granted to senior arbiters for sensitive investigations. He typed, Earth, Resource Wars, Military Tribunals. The screen flashed a warning. Restricted. Information. Diplomatic sensitivity. Brekthar overrode the warning with his security clearance. The files began to load. Thousands of documents, images, and videos showing a side of humanity the Council had never seen. By the void, he whispered, as the true nature of his human colleagues began to reveal itself on the screen before him. The Grand Council chamber hummed with angry voices. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy filled the tiered seats that rose in a perfect circle. At the center stood Earth's ambassador, Philip Warren, his face a mask of diplomatic calm despite the storm breaking around him. High Commander Zorv stood at the speaking platform, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Behind him, a large holographic display showed footage that had never been meant for Council eyes. The video showed Lieutenant Gregory Patel, now a respected arbiter, standing calmly in a sealed room as green gas filled a chamber containing bound prisoners. The prisoners thrashed and screamed soundlessly behind thick glass. The timestamp showed this had occurred during the Mars Uprising, 8 years before humanity joined the Council. These are not isolated incidents, Zorv's voice boomed through the chamber. We have discovered similar evidence for all 5 human arbiters. They are not distinguished warriors as we were led to believe. They are criminals by humanity's own laws. Another video appeared. Major Alan Blackwood ordering the deployment of oxygen depletion bombs on a civilian mining colony. Then Specialist Nicole Harris using captured enemies to clear minefields. The evidence was damning and irrefutable. Does Earth deny these records? Asked the Trilaxian representative, her tentacles waving in what humans had learned was an expression of disgust. Ambassador Warren stepped forward. He had been awakened 3 hours ago when the emergency session was called. General Monroe had briefed him quickly on what was coming. There was no point in denying the evidence. Their only hope was to reframe it. Earth does not deny these records, Warren said, his voice steady. However, we reject the characterization that we deliberately misled the Council. Angry murmurs filled the chamber. You sent us war criminals as representatives, Zorv thundered. Warren's eyes narrowed slightly. We sent you effective soldiers with experience in unconventional warfare. That is precisely what you requested. We did not request butchers and torturers, the Goran delegate shouted from his seat. Warren looked around the chamber, taking his time before responding. The soldiers we provided were products of Earth's most desperate conflicts. The resource wars pushed humanity to its limits. We fought for survival when our population reached 10 billion and our resources could no longer sustain us. It was a time when normal rules were suspended. These acts violated your own laws of war, Zorv pointed out. Yes, Warren admitted. And after those wars, our civilization made difficult choices about justice, reconciliation, and moving forward. Many who crossed lines during the conflict were quietly removed from public service, rather than subjected to public trials that would only deepen our societal wounds. He gestured to the display where the damning evidence had been shown. When the Council requested our best soldiers for the Arbiters, we saw an opportunity to put these individual skills to better use in service of galactic peace. You deceived us, a bird-like Avari representative chirped angrily. Warren's voice hardened. Did we? Your invitation specified soldiers with exceptional combat experience and tactical innovation. You never asked about their moral records or requested information about our military justice system. In a private chamber adjacent to the main hall, the 5 human arbiters watched the proceedings on a screen. They sat in silence, their faces unreadable. They had been confined to quarters when the evidence first emerged, their arbiter pins and weapons confiscated. Well, it was good while it lasted, John Martinez said with a bitter smile. Samantha Wells stared at the screen where Warren was now engaged in heated debate with 3 council species. They're not going to execute us, she said quietly. The Council doesn't believe in capital punishment. Prison might be worse, Alan Blackwood replied. Some council species live for centuries. We could be looking at very long sentences. Gregory Patel hadn't spoken since they'd been confined together. Now he looked up. I don't regret what I did, he said. The Mars uprising would have spread to Earth if we hadn't stopped it. Millions more would have died. Save the justifications, Nicole Harris said sharply. We all did what we thought was necessary at the time. But let's not pretend our hands aren't soaked in blood. The door slid open and General Monroe entered. His uniform was perfectly pressed despite the crisis. The guards outside made no move to stop him. Earth's diplomatic status still provided certain privileges. What's the play, General? Alan asked. Monroe looked at each of them in turn. The council is divided. Many want you tried under their justice system. Others are pragmatic enough to recognize your value, especially with the Vrex situation developing. The Vrex? Samantha frowned. We've only heard rumors. Monroe nodded. A new species on the outer rim, extremely aggressive. They've already destroyed 2 council outposts. Their tactics are outside the council's experience. John Martinez laughed without humor. So they need monsters to fight monsters. I wouldn't put it that way to the council, Monroe advised, but essentially yes. Back in the main chamber, Ambassador Warren was concluding his statement. Earth acknowledges that by our current standards, these 5 individuals committed serious crimes during our internal conflicts. However, we also recognize that they possess unique skills that the Council now needs desperately. You suggest we continue to employ war criminals as our elite forces? Zorv asked incredulously. Warren met the alien's compound eyes without flinching. I suggest you recognize that facing the Vrex threat will require approaches that fall outside your conventional doctrine. These 5 understand warfare in ways your forces do not, precisely because of their experiences. The chamber erupted again, species arguing among themselves. Council Military Director Hela Shivar, a stoic figure from a species known for their strategic genius, rose to speak. I have reviewed the reports from the Vrex encounters, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Our conventional forces are failing against their tactics. They use biological weapons, suicide attacks, and target civilian populations deliberately. She turned to face Zorv. As distasteful as it may be, these humans understand this kind of warfare. They have faced it before. So we compromise our principles out of convenience? The Trilaxian representative demanded. No, Hilashavar replied. We adapt to survive, just as humanity did during their resource wars. In the private chamber, Monroe received a message on his secure communicator. He read it quickly, his expression uncharacteristically surprised. What is it? Samantha asked. The military directorate is requesting your deployment against the Vrex, he said. Not as arbiters, but as special advisors operating under council supervision. Gregory Patel raised an eyebrow. They want our help, even knowing what we've done. Desperation makes for strange allies, Monroe replied. The question is, will you agree to help them? After this, there's no going back to anonymity. Everyone will know who and what you are. The five exchanged glances, a silent communication born of shared experiences both before and after joining the Arbiters. What's the alternative? Alan finally asked. Return to Earth in chains? Monroe's face was grim. Essentially, yes. The political pressure would be too great to ignore. You'd face public trials for crimes most people have tried to forget. Samantha stood, her decision made. We've always been weapons, General. First for Earth, then for the Council. At least this time, we go in with everyone knowing exactly what we are. The command ship Vigilant hung in space above the colony world New Terra Nova. Through the viewport, Lieutenant Gregory Patel could see the destruction below. 3 cities burned, their night sides glowing with uncontrolled fires. The Vrex attack had come without warning 2 days earlier. Their tactics make no sense, said Admiral Kultorax, a tall, blue-skinned alien whose species was known for their mathematical approach to warfare. He gestured at the holographic display showing enemy positions. They sacrifice their own forces needlessly. They target civilian centers rather than military objectives. They refuse all communication attempts. Gregory studied the display with narrowed eyes. The 5 humans had been brought to the front lines as special consultants rather than arbiters. Their council supervisors watched their every move, recording all recommendations and actions for review. It was prison with a different name. They make perfect sense, Gregory replied. If you understand what they're trying to do. Across the room, Alan Blackwood nodded. They're not fighting to win battles, they're fighting to break your will. The council officers looked confused. This concept was alien to species that had fought their wars according to strict codes for thousands of years. Imagine an enemy who doesn't care about honor, fair combat, or even their own survival. Samantha Wells explained. They only care about making you suffer until you surrender or die. John Martinez pointed to the largest burning city on the display. They hit population centers first because they want maximum psychological impact. They want you afraid. Admiral, Kultorax's faceplates shifted and what the humans had learned was an expression of distress. But why would they waste resources attacking civilians when our military bases are the real threat? Nicole Harris laughed bitterly. Because they understand something you don't. Wars aren't won by destroying bases. They're won by destroying resolve. The 5 humans had spent the past week studying everything known about the Rex. The aliens resembled large insects with 6 limbs and exoskeletons. They communicated through chemical signals and high-pitched sounds. Their technology was roughly equal to the Council's, but their tactics were brutally effective. What would you recommend? Asked Council Supervisor Ethrax, the official assigned to monitor the humans' advice. His tone made it clear he asked only because he was required to. Gregory stepped forward. First, abandon conventional defense doctrine. The Vrex don't follow rules of engagement, so defending according to standard patterns makes you predictable. Second, Alan continued, identify their command structure and target it specifically. Not their bases, but their leaders. Samantha nodded. Third, use their psychology against them. They communicate through chemical signals. We can disrupt that. The council officers looked uncomfortable. Targeted assassinations and chemical warfare violated their military codes. These recommendations conflict with council warfare principles, Ethrax stated. John Martinez stepped forward. With respect, those principles were developed for fighting civilized enemies who share your values. The Vrex will use your principles against you. We've seen this before, Nicole added quietly. During the Resource Wars, the Western Alliance tried to fight with restraint against enemies who had none. They lost 3 major cities before they changed their approach. A tense silence filled the command center. The council officers exchanged uneasy glances. We should continue with standard doctrine, Ethrax finally said. The Council has approved a conventional defense plan. The humans said nothing more. They had made their recommendations. Now they would watch another disaster unfold. 6 hours later, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Vrex had broken through New Terra Nova's orbital defenses using suicide ships packed with explosives. Now they were landing troops near the planet's capital city. They're targeting the water purification centers, a sensor officer reported. They're releasing biological agents. Gregory watched as Council forces moved into textbook defensive formations, exactly as their doctrine prescribed. The Vrex simply flowed around them, accepting heavy losses to reach civilian targets. "This is pointless," he muttered to Samantha. "They're fighting the wrong war." The situation deteriorated rapidly. Council forces maintained perfect formation while the Vrex ignored them to attack soft targets. Civilian casualties mounted by the minute. Admiral Clitorax turned to the humans, mandibles twitching in distress. "Your recommendations? I'm officially requesting alternative approaches." Gregory met the alien's 4 eyes. "Give me tactical command of a strike team. No restrictions." "That exceeds your authority as consultants," Ethrax objected. "People are dying while you worry about authority," Alan snapped. "Make a decision." The Admiral hesitated, then nodded. "Granted, what do you need?" "A fast ship. Stealth capabilities. 5 of your best soldiers who can follow orders without question," Gregory replied. "And our supervision protocols?" Ethrax asked. "Suspended for this operation," Clitorax decided. "Time is critical." Within an hour, the humans and 5 Council soldiers were aboard a stealth craft heading toward the Vrex landing zones. In the ship's small briefing room, Gregory outlined his plan. "The Vrex use a chemical hierarchy," he explained, pointing to biological data on a screen. "Their leaders emit specific pheromones that subordinates follow instinctively. We're going to use that against them." He turned to Nicole. "Can you modify your explosive compounds to include a synthetic version of their command pheromones?" She nodded. "Give me 2 hours and proper materials." "What's the objective?" asked Dravik, a reptilian Council soldier. "We'll infiltrate behind their lines and plant the modified explosives at key points," Gregory explained. "When they detonate, the synthetic pheromones will spread confusion through their ranks." "That's biological warfare," one of the Council soldiers said uneasily. "Yes," Gregory agreed without apology. "It's also how we save millions of civilians." No one argued further. The mission proceeded under cover of darkness. Using tactics that would have been considered criminal during the resource wars, the team infiltrated the Vrex-held territory. John Martinez moved silently ahead, eliminating sentries with methods he'd never shown his Arbiter colleagues. Samantha created diversions that drew Vrex forces away from their objectives. Meanwhile, Nicole prepared her special explosives, mixing chemicals with practiced efficiency. The Council soldiers watched in uneasy silence as she worked. This was warfare they had never been trained for. At the primary Vrex command post, Gregory observed their patterns through enhanced optics. "Their leader stays in the central structure," he told Alan. "We need to eliminate it and deploy the pheromone bomb simultaneously." Alan nodded. "Just like the series operation." Gregory winced slightly at the reference. Similar tactics, better cause. When the attack came, it was swift and merciless. Alan led a precision strike on the command post while the others planted Nicole's devices throughout the Vrex positions. The Council soldiers fought with surprising adaptability, following the humans' lead despite their discomfort with the tactics. The effect was immediate and devastating. When the modified explosives detonated, the released pheromones threw the Vrex forces into chaos. Without clear chemical leadership, their coordinated attack collapsed into confused individual actions. From the Vigilant, Admiral Clitorax watched, in astonishment as the Vrex forces suddenly turned on each other or scattered in disarray. "What did they do?" he asked Ethrax. The supervisor studied the sensor readings. "Something we would never have considered," he replied quietly. "Something that violates 17 Council warfare conventions." "And saved how many lives?" Ethrax had no answer. When the humans returned to the ship, they were met with a mix of awe and fear. Council officers kept their distance, whispering among themselves as the five walked through the corridors. In the Admiral's private chamber, Clotorax faced them. Your methods were troubling, but effective. That's an accurate summary of our entire careers, John said with a grim smile. The Council will need to reconsider its approach to this conflict, the Admiral continued, and perhaps its judgment of you as well. 5 years passed since the Vrex conflict. The Grand Hall of the Tactical Response Academy gleamed under soft lights as graduates from 17 species stood in formation. At the podium, Colonel Samantha Wells surveyed the diverse group with quiet pride. Her dress uniform now bore the insignia of Academy Director rather than the Arbiter symbol. You are the first class to complete the new tactical curriculum, she began. When you return to your worlds, many will question what you've learned here. They will say we have abandoned the old ways of honorable combat. The graduates remained silent, watching her intently. They had spent 2 years training under the 5 humans whose controversial methods had ultimately defeated the Vrex. I cannot tell you they are wrong, Samantha continued. We have abandoned certain ideas about warfare, but we did so because our enemies abandoned them first. Among the seated officials, Admiral Clotorax nodded slightly. After the Vrex War, he had become one of the strongest advocates for the new training program despite initial resistance from the Council. What makes a war criminal? Samantha asked the graduates. Is it their actions alone? Or is it the context, the intent, and what they do after? She touched the small medallion at her collar, a symbol created after the war showing Earth's outline surrounded by stars. All 5 humans wore them now. My hands will never be clean, she said quietly. All of us who survived Earth's resource wars carry burdens you cannot see. But those same experiences allowed us to face enemies that threatened this Council's existence. In the back of the hall, General Frank Monroe watched with an unreadable expression. Now in his 60s, he had remained Earth's military liaison to the Council through years of difficult transition. Beside him sat Ambassador Warren and Admiral May Diane Russell, who had recently been appointed as Earth's representative to the Council. They've come a long way, Russell murmured. Monroe nodded. From war criminals to respected instructors. Not the future I imagined for them. Was it worth it? Warren asked, using them as our Trojan horse? Monroe considered the question. It wasn't my intention. But sometimes the right people are in the wrong place for the right reasons. At the podium, Samantha was concluding her speech. Tomorrow you will receive your assignments across Council space. You will take with you both the wisdom of the Council's ancient traditions and the hard lessons humanity learned through blood. Use both wisely. After the ceremony, the 5 humans gathered in a small garden outside the Academy. Years had changed, them in different ways. Alan Blackwood's hair had gone completely gray. John Martinez walked with a slight limp from injuries sustained during the Vrex campaign. Gregory Patel had become quieter, more thoughtful. Nicole Harris had married a Council diplomat and now wore civilian clothes most days. I still have the dreams, Alan said, breaking the comfortable silence. Ceres, the colony, all those people. The others nodded. They all had their ghosts. Do you think we've made up for it? Nicole asked. Everything we did during the wars? Gregory shook his head. You don't make up for something like that. You just try to ensure it wasn't completely meaningless. The Council's different now, John observed. They've adapted more than I expected. It was true. The Galactic Council had undergone significant changes. The Earth Protocols, a new framework for handling existential threats, had been formally adopted 3 years ago. It balanced ethical considerations with pragmatic necessity, acknowledging that sometimes conventional rules must be set aside to preserve civilization itself. High Commander Zorv approached the group, his once vibrant exoskeleton now faded with age. Relations between him and the humans had been tense for years after the truth emerged, but time and shared challenges had created a grudging respect. The graduates are impressive, he said. You've trained them well, We taught them to think. Beyond doctrine, Samantha replied. The rest was already in them. Sorv's mandibles clicked softly, a sound the humans now recognized as thoughtfulness rather than agitation. I did not believe beings with your history could serve the Council's ideals, he admitted. I was wrong. We don't serve your ideals, Alan said bluntly. We protect them by doing what idealists cannot. Sorv considered this. A distinction I did not understand before the Vrex. Now I do. Later that evening, a smaller, more solemn ceremony took place on Earth. In a quiet garden outside the rebuilt Geneva headquarters, the 5 former war criminals stood before a small gathering of military and government officials. General Monroe stepped forward, holding 5 small boxes. Today we acknowledge a complex truth. These 5 individuals committed acts during the resource wars that violated our most sacred principles of warfare. For years we hid that truth, even from ourselves. He opened the first box, revealing a medallion bearing Earth's new motto in the Council's common language. From our darkest deeds came our brightest wisdom. Yet these same individuals carrying the burden of those actions ultimately helped save not just humanity, but the entire Council from a threat that could not be defeated through conventional means. One by one, he presented the medallions to the 5. This was not a pardon. Their records would forever show what they had done. It was something more nuanced, an acknowledgement of both their crimes and their redemption. Admiral Russell spoke next. When we joined the galactic community, we faced a choice about how to present ourselves. We could have hidden our violent history, pretended to be something we're not. Instead, we ultimately showed the Council both our darkness and our light. She looked at each of the 5 in turn. You carried the worst of our history with you, and in doing so, you helped build a bridge to our future. After the ceremony, Samantha stood alone by a small reflecting pool. The setting sun cast long shadows across the water. Gregory joined her, hands clasped behind his back. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they hadn't discovered the truth? He asked. Samantha watched ripples spread across the water. We would have continued living a lie, and the Council would have continued believing warfare could always follow gentlemanly rules. Was it worth it? Everything we went through? She considered the question carefully. I think about the people I killed during the resource wars. I told myself it was necessary, that the greater good justified any action. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. She touched the medallion at her collar. But I believe what we taught the Council was necessary. The galaxy is not always kind or fair. Sometimes survival requires difficult choices. Gregory nodded. Not heroes or villains, just survivors. Who taught others how to survive? Samantha added softly. As night fell over Earth, lights came on across the rebuilt cities. In orbit above, Council ships moved alongside human vessels, their crews now training together using doctrines that blended ancient wisdom with hard-earned human experience. The 5 who had once been branded war criminals and then elite soldiers had become something neither they nor the Council could have imagined. Teachers whose darkest experiences had ultimately helped preserve the peace they had once violated.